I can't write in Matthew Hussey's exact voice, but I can write an original script that carries a calm, direct, emotionally precise relationship coach tone. Most people think the reason you fall for avoidant men is that something about them is just more powerful, more magnetic, more unforgettable. It isn't. And that matters because if you keep calling it chemistry, you'll keep missing the real thing that's happening. What's really happening is that something in you recognizes the emotional distance, the mixed signals, the warmth followed by withdrawal. And instead of treating that as a warning, part of you treats it as home. That is why you can be highly intelligent, deeply intuitive, full of self-worth in so many parts of your life and still find yourself at 11 at night replaying that exact phrase he used. He isn't ready. He needs space. He likes you, but something feels off. And you sit there trying to decide whether you misunderstood, whether you moved too fast, whether you asked for too much, whether one more perfectly measured text could somehow change the dynamic. But the real question is not why this man pulled away. The real question is why his pulling away feels so deeply familiar that your whole nervous system starts calling it love. Here's the truth. You do not fall for every avoidant because they are all extraordinary. You fall for them because they activate old wounds with devastating precision. They know nothing about your history, and yet they step onto the stage of your life and somehow end up reading from a script that was written long before they arrived. That is what makes this so unsettling. It isn't just that he is distant. It's that his distance lands in a place in you that already knows how to wait, already knows how to overfunction, already knows how to make excuses for someone else's limitations while quietly abandoning your own standard. So when he pulls back, you don't simply feel disappointed. You feel recruited into the old choreography of proving, soothing, understanding, earning, minimizing, and staying just one more day in the orbit of someone who only ever offered the bare minimum. That is why this hurts in a way that feels bigger than the actual length of the connection. He is not just touching your feelings, he is touching your history. Picture this. You meet someone and there is just enough warmth in the beginning to make you lean in. He's attentive, then slightly hard to read. Present, then absent. Open one night, elusive the next. He gives you just enough to create mystery and just little enough to make you work for clarity. And because part of you learned very early that love is something you notice through fluctuations rather than consistency, your body interprets this pattern as depth. Why does that happen? Because the nervous system often trusts what is familiar before it trusts what is healthy. What feels calm can feel boring when you were trained on emotional uncertainty. What feels steady can feel suspicious when chaos was your first teacher. So the avoidant man walks in, and he doesn't have to do very much. He just has to resemble the emotional climate you already know. And once he does, you begin confusing activation with connection. You call it a spark. You call it a pull. You call it a rare intensity. But very often, it is simply an old wound hearing an old song. Let me be clear about one thing. This is not about blaming your parents, and it is not about turning your childhood into a courtroom. It is about finally seeing the pattern without romance around it. Because if you cannot see it, you cannot interrupt it. One wound begins in inconsistency. Maybe love was there, but it came and went. Maybe affection was real, but unpredictable. Maybe the people who cared for you were loving in one moment and emotionally unavailable in the next. So you learned not to look for consistency as the measure of love. You learned to look for flashes. The good moment, the reassuring text, the sudden tenderness after distance, the reunion after the silence. And now, as an adult, when a man is hot and cold, some part of you doesn't say, "This is unstable." It says, "This is promising." Because your system was trained to survive on intermittent warmth. That is one of the cruelest patterns of all, because it means the very thing that should make you leave is the thing that makes you lean closer. He didn't expect you to notice the instability. He expected you to normalize it instead. And if you were raised inside inconsistency, that expectation lands far too easily. Here's what most people miss. The second wound is the wound of earning love. Somewhere along the line, you may have learned that love is not something freely given and safely received. Love is something negotiated, performed for, protected through usefulness, maintained by being low maintenance, understanding, funny, beautiful, sexually available, endlessly patient, emotionally literate for two people instead of one. So when you meet an avoidant, you don't just ask whether he is capable of meeting you. You begin auditioning, you watch his moods, you adjust your tone. You hold back what you need so you don't overwhelm him. You shrink your boundary to preserve the possibility of closeness. Think about how exhausting that is. You are not in a relationship at that point. You are in a silent job interview for the role of woman who can finally make him ready. And why do so many women stay in that audition for far too long? Because when love used to feel conditional, effort feels romantic. Struggle feels meaningful. Winning over a difficult person feels like self-worth. But it isn't self-worth. It is self-abandonment dressed up as devotion. And here's something most people don't see coming. Avoidant men are not always drawn to women with low self-esteem. Very often, they are drawn to women with enormous emotional capacity who have simply been taught to aim that capacity in the wrong direction. You can be compassionate and still tolerate too much. You can be strong and still confuse patience with dignity. You can be successful and still give the spotlight to someone who has done nothing except be complicated. That is the trap. The avoidant does not have to offer a full relationship if you are busy finding meaning in fragments. A late-night message becomes proof. A vulnerable confession becomes progress. A tiny shift becomes a comeback, and the more emotionally intelligent you are, the easier it can be to narrate his behavior in the best possible light. He has been hurt. He's scared. He's emotionally immature, but at least he's honest about it. He has limitations, but he's trying. Listen carefully to that. The language of empathy can become the prison where you keep yourself. Compassion without a boundary is not love. It is permission. I'm going to say something, and some of you will disagree. The third wound is not just fear of abandonment. It is familiarity with being the second choice. Maybe no one said those words to you outright. Maybe they didn't have to. Maybe you were chosen after someone else. Maybe attention went somewhere else first. Maybe your feelings took up less space in the room than someone else's chaos. Maybe you learned that if you were patient enough, useful enough, pleasing enough, eventually it would be your turn. So now, when a man gives you half of himself, something in you whispers, this is how it starts. Stay calm. Don't ask too much. Your turn will come. But women who carry this wound often don't realize how deeply it affects their standard. They do not consciously believe they deserve less. They just unconsciously keep making room for less because being almost chosen feels normal. Why do you keep staying available to someone who won't claim you? Because some old part of you is still trying to reverse the original injury. If this man finally chooses you, then maybe the old story gets rewritten. Maybe you were always enough, but that is too heavy a burden to place on any romance. He didn't expect you to walk away from being an option. He expected you to keep proving you could become the exception instead. I want to pause on that for a second. An avoidant man does not just trigger longing. He triggers your inner child's oldest bargain. If I am easier, maybe I get to stay. If I am quieter, maybe he comes closer. If I ask for less, maybe I don't get left. And once that bargain is activated, your adult intelligence starts serving a child's fear. That is when you write the careful text. That is when you agree to see where it goes. That is when you accept orbiting in place of intimacy. That is when you call confusion mystery, because admitting the truth would demand a power shift. And the truth is this: an avoidant man often benefits from your willingness to misunderstand your own pain. He gets the warmth of your presence without the responsibility of your standard. He gets your empathy without earning your trust. He gets access without accountability. So that is why self-respect matters so much here. Not because it wins him back, not because it gives you the upper hand in some game, but because it stops you from collaborating with the very dynamic that is hurting you. Self-respect is the point where you stop saying, "How do I keep this?" and start asking, "What is this costing me?" Now, let me explain something slowly. The fourth wound is over-responsibility. It is the wound that makes you feel in charge of everyone else's comfort. It makes you brilliant at reading the room and terrible at reading your own depletion. So when the avoidant starts pulling away, you do not immediately think he is withdrawing because closeness challenges him. You think, "What did I do? How can I make this easier for him? How can I phrase my needs in a way that feels less threatening? How can I be more understanding of his timing, his fear, his stress, his past, his pain?" This wound turns you into an emotional translator for men who are fully capable of learning their own language. And here's the problem. The more you take responsibility for his discomfort, the less room there is for him to confront it himself. He didn't expect you to leave his confusion where it belonged. He expected you to carry it for him instead. That is what women with this wound do so beautifully and so painfully. They make a man's inner conflict feel manageable for him, while making their own loneliness feel invisible to themselves. That is not connection. That is unpaid emotional labor in the costume of intimacy. Here's the thing. The fifth wound is perhaps the quietest one, but it may be the most powerful. It is the wound of mistaking emotional unavailability for depth. When someone is hard to access, you assume there must be more there. When someone is silent, you project substance into the silence. When someone is withheld, you call them complex. Why? Because if what is hidden must be valuable, then your effort to uncover it feels justified. But scarcity is not substance. Distance is not depth. A closed door is not automatically a treasure chest. Sometimes it is just a closed door. And that is difficult to accept when your whole romantic narrative has been built around being the woman who sees what others miss, who reaches the man no one else understood, who stays long enough to witness his breakthrough. There is warmth in that fantasy for a while. There is meaning in it. There is even magnetism in it. But eventually, it leaves you in the same place it always does, waiting outside someone else's emotional house while your own lights are going out one by one. He didn't expect you to stop romanticizing the distance. He expected you to keep calling it depth instead. A great deal of heartbreak begins right there. Think about it like this. Chasing an avoidant is like trying to keep a volleyball underwater. You can do it for a while. You can use both hands. You can brace your shoulders and hold it there with all the force of your focus. But the moment you tire, the moment your attention slips, the thing shoots back up and reminds you that you were never holding something still. You were fighting its nature. That is what happens when you keep trying to create closeness with someone organized around distance. You think the right conversation, the right timing, the right softness, the right silence, the right amount of mystery will finally change his energy. But if someone has not done the work to become available, your skill cannot do that work for him. Why does this matter so much? Because women with inner child wounds often believe that if they can just find the perfect method, they can finally be safe. But the method is not the answer. The answer is whether the person in front of you is capable of reciprocity. And if he is not, all your brilliance becomes a more elegant form of suffering. Your pattern does not need better tactics. It needs reclaiming. Here's what's actually happening underneath all of this. When an avoidant man meets a woman who is willing to overfunction, the relationship can feel oddly stable for a time because she is doing the emotional lifting. She initiates the vulnerable conversations. She notices the shifts in the dynamic. She repairs the disconnection. She gives the benefit of the doubt. She absorbs the uncertainty. And because she is so busy managing the absence, she does not realize how much of the relationship exists only because of her effort. Then one day she gets tired or hurt enough or clear enough and she stops. She becomes quiet. She steps back. She stops writing his narrative for him and suddenly he feels the void. Why does he feel it then when he seemed so comfortable before? Because before, your energy was buffering him from himself. Before, your pursuit kept the mirror fogged. Before, he could pretend the connection was casual because you were carrying the emotional meaning of it for both of you. The moment you stop, the air changes. The pattern becomes visible. The absence becomes audible. And that is when many men begin to experience the echo of what they were content not to name while you were still there. Let me be clear about something. Silence is not a trick. If you use silence to manipulate, to manufacture the upper hand, to create a reunion on a schedule, you will poison yourself with your own strategy. But if silence is the natural result of your dignity waking up, then silence becomes truthful. It becomes the moment you stop auditioning. It becomes the moment you say, without saying it, I will not stand in the wings of my own life while someone else decides if I belong on the stage. He starts to wonder why you're not chasing. And here's the thing, the wondering is what undoes him. He starts to notice the absence of your reassurance. Why? Because reassurance had become part of the furniture. He starts to feel the quiet where your warmth used to be. Why? Because your warmth had been covering the cold spots in his own behavior. He starts to question his narrative. Why? Because your silence is a mirror, and mirrors are deeply uncomfortable for people who relied on your attention to avoid themselves. He didn't expect you to become still, he expected you to keep moving toward him instead. And when you don't, the power shift is not dramatic, it is simply real. And here's something most people don't see coming. Your silence is not only working on him, it is working on you. In the beginning, silence feels like withdrawal. It feels like loss. It feels like sitting with your hands in your lap while every part of you wants to reach for the phone and say one more clarifying thing. But if you stay with it long enough, the silence starts to reveal what the relationship was actually built on. You see where you were performing calm while feeling anxious. You see where you were accepting the bare minimum because you were afraid your real standard would cost you the connection. You see where your dignity had slowly become negotiable, and that is painful, but it is also the beginning of freedom, because once you can see the choreography, you cannot unsee it. Once you can hear the script, you cannot keep pretending it is spontaneous. Once you recognize that an avoidant man doesn't feel special, he feels familiar, your whole romantic narrative begins to rearrange itself. That sentence matters. An avoidant man doesn't feel special, he feels familiar. And familiar pain has misled more women than a lack of self-worth ever did. I want to walk through this with you one piece at a time. Imagine an empty room after someone has left it. At first, what you notice is the void. Just the blunt fact of no one there, no sound, no movement, nothing to answer back. Then, if you stay in the room, you begin to feel the vacuum, that strange pressure where your own thoughts suddenly get louder because there is nothing left to drown them out. Then comes the echo. Every word you excused, every time you shrank, every moment you called uncertainty passion, starts bouncing off the walls and returning to you with more clarity than before. After that, the air in the room changes weight. It becomes heavier, not because he is there, but because what is true is there. Then the room begins asking questions of you. Why did this feel like home? Why did you call distance depth? Why did you hand over the spotlight of your life to someone hiding from intimacy? And if you stay a little longer, the room becomes reckoning, not punishment, not shame, reckoning. A place where what was blurred becomes sharp. A place where your old pattern is visible under glass, almost like a terrarium, sealed enough for you to study it without living inside it anymore. That is what healthy silence can become, not emptiness, a laboratory for truth. I'm going to say something else and you may not like hearing it. Part of healing these wounds is grieving the identity they gave you. Because these wounds do give you an identity, the understanding one, the patient one, the woman who can handle complexity, the woman who sees the good in difficult men, the woman who doesn't need too much, the woman who stays composed even while being slowly starved. There is pride in that identity. There is even a kind of nobility in it. But there is also devastation, because the same qualities that made you feel strong may have made you available to people who were not strong enough to love you well. So healing is not just learning a new dating strategy, it is letting an old self-image die. Do you know why that is so hard? Because when you stop overgiving, you no longer get to feel exceptional for how much you can endure. When you stop chasing, you no longer get to feel heroic for how much you can fix. When you stop waiting, you no longer get to tell yourself that patience is proof of love. And yet this is where your life begins to come back to you, not when he changes, when your identity changes. Here's the truth. The you who keeps falling for avoidance is not foolish. She is patterned. She is loyal to old survival strategies that once made sense. She learned to read microshifts in energy because it helped her feel safe. She learned to anticipate disconnection because surprise was too costly. She learned to win closeness through emotional labor because direct receiving was not something life trained her to trust. So I need you to hear me. Healing is not you standing in front of a mirror and saying bigger things about yourself. Healing is much quieter than that. It is you noticing the moment your stomach tightens around inconsistency and not calling that excitement. It is you hearing someone say he isn't ready and not translating that into a project. It is you noticing when a man keeps you orbiting and deciding that your self-respect matters more than access to his occasional attention. He didn't expect you to believe your own feelings. He expected you to keep overriding them instead. But this is where your narrative changes. You stop being the woman who can tolerate ambiguity the longest. You become the woman who can tell the truth the soonest. Here's what most people miss. The goal is not to become cold. It is not to become harder to reach just for the sake of mystery. It is not to punish men for what one man did. The goal is to become oriented around reality. A healthy man does not need you to shrink your needs in order to stay. A healthy man does not feel more drawn to you because you have less dignity. A healthy man is not turned off by your standard. He is relieved by it because it tells him he is with someone who values her own life enough not to turn the connection into a fog. And if a man disappears when he meets your clarity, what has really been lost? Potential? No. Fantasy. A fantasy in which your patience eventually transforms his emotional immaturity into devotion. That fantasy has cost you enough. Let it go. Let the mystery go when it is only masking limitations. Let the chemistry go when it is only old pain asking for one more chance to win a different ending. Let his narrative go when it asks you to betray your own. And here's something most people don't see coming. When you stop choosing avoidant men, your life can feel strangely quiet at first. The drama drops, the obsessive thinking drops, the constant decoding drops, and for a little while that can feel like emptiness. Why? Because peace is unfamiliar when your system was trained on pursuit. But stay with that quiet. It is not emptiness, it is space. Space where your self-worth is no longer on trial. Space where your body is not bracing for the next withdrawal. Space where your friendships matter again, where your work regains color, where your mornings are not shaped by whether he texted, where your evenings are not organized around someone else's indecision. This is the part people skip because it is not glamorous. It is practical. It is ordinary. It is you picking up the phone and calling the friend you have not been fully present with. It is you eating at a real table instead of over the sink between anxiety spirals. It is you moving your body until your thoughts are not the only place your feelings live. It is you reteeing the loose ends of your own life. That is reclaiming. That is dignity with shoes on. Now, let me explain something slowly. If you want to stop falling for every avoidant you meet, you must become deeply suspicious of what feels instantly fated. Not because love can't be powerful, but because your wounds are powerful too. When someone creates that immediate pull, pause. Ask a better question. Is this connection or is this recognition? Is this warmth or is this relief that I finally know how to play my old role? Is this man present or am I filling in the blanks with hope? What happens when I ask for clarity? What happens when I hold a boundary? What happens when I do not rush to maintain the connection all by myself? Those questions will save you years. Because people reveal themselves very quickly when you stop doing the labor that kept them looking better than they are. He didn't expect you to stop carrying the conversation. He expected you to keep animating the bond instead. He didn't expect you to ask whether he could actually meet you. He expected you to keep wondering how to become easier to meet. That old pattern wants your permission. Don't give it. Here's the thing. The deepest healing often happens when you realize that the person you were trying to become for him was never the person you actually needed to become for yourself. You were trying to become more patient, more mysterious, more strategic, less needy, less direct, less human. But the version of you that heals is not less. She is more honest, more grounded, more willing to disappoint people who benefit from her self-abandonment, more willing to let someone misunderstand her than to keep misunderstanding herself. That is a huge shift. That is the real comeback, not the one where he returns and finally sees your value. The one where you return to yourself and finally stop negotiating your value with people who are only available in fragments. And yes, when that happens, some men do feel the loss. Some men do come back around. Some men do feel the echo of your absence and realize what your presence had meant. But that cannot be the reason. The reason has to be you, your dignity, your self-respect, your standard. Otherwise, you are still living inside his narrative, even while pretending to leave it. Imagine yourself a few months from now, not transformed into some untouchable myth, just quieter inside, clearer, less available for confusion. You meet someone new and he is charming, but inconsistent. You notice it early. Your body still recognizes the old pattern, but now recognition is not surrender. You don't make him a project. You don't turn his distance into mystery. You don't sit in the wings waiting for a bigger role in a play he has no intention of writing with you. You simply see him, and because you see him clearly, you can also see yourself clearly. You can feel the old pull without obeying it. That is healing. Not the disappearance of attraction, the disappearance of obedience to attraction. You are no longer compelled by what once controlled you. You are no longer hypnotized by the familiar. You are no longer willing to be a second choice in your own life. That woman is not cold. She is full. She has warmth without leakage. She has openness without self-erasure. She has mystery because her life is rich, not because she is performing distance to earn the upper hand. And that kind of woman is magnetic in the truest sense, not because she chases less, but because she leaves no doubt about the standard by which she lives. So if you are heartbroken right now, if you are replaying the breakup, or the almost breakup, or the non-relationship that somehow hurt like one, I want you to know that the pain is real, but so is the information inside it. This hurt is not just here to wound you. It is here to show you the place where old injuries still get to choose your future. And once you see that, you are not powerless anymore. Sad perhaps. Shaken, yes, but not powerless. You do not need another perfect explanation of his energy. You do not need to decode his silence until it tells you something flattering. You do not need to turn his emotional immaturity into a puzzle whose solution proves your worth. The thesis is simpler than that, and I want you to keep it. An avoidant man doesn't feel special, he feels familiar. And when you stop mistaking familiarity for love, the whole pattern begins to break. Here's the truth. Dignity is not loud. Self-respect is not performative. They do not post speeches. They do not announce a grand departure. They simply stop volunteering for what hurts. And when you do that, something gentle but irreversible begins. Your nervous system learns a new standard. Your heart learns that warmth does not have to be rationed. Your life stops orbiting someone else's indecision. That is the real power shift. Not that he finally understands your value. That you do. And once you do, his confusion is no longer your home.